Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in this world of ours. Welcome to the inaugural edition of Spirit with Knute. I'm your host, Len Clark, joined by my co-host, Jeff Harrell, author of the book, As God's Witness, a story about the plane crash that killed Knute Rockne. Jeff, how are you? I'm excited about this, and let's catch up. How's the book doing?
Book is doing good. Happy St. Patrick's Day, by the way. It is St. Patrick's Day. And but the book is doing really well. We've the past year has been kind of a blessing in disguise because we've been able to get a full wind in our sails, going into when things open up. And we've mostly everything's been on like Facebook, Twitter, social media. And but I've gotten good reviews on it, great reviews on it from people like Ian Punnett from Coast to Coast AM and Keith Olbermann. Keith gave us some really nice feedback, and our buddy Alex Painter from Onward Victory, the Notre Dame podcast, and of course you, Len, you've been great for us. So it's and the feedback has been incredible, and it's really got to start to take hold. And I'm really I'm excited. I'm excited for this book. I really am.
Okay, we're going to go back and talk about how the book came about. But in the next couple of weeks, we're going to celebrate the 90th anniversary of the plane crash that killed Knute Rockne. But we'll get to that. But Jeff, take us back to your journey. How did this whole process begin?
Started out as a coffee table book with Knute Rockne with photos, just historic photos from the Notre Dame archives. And one afternoon, I was in here at Augie's locker room, and Augie showed me a newspaper headline from the South Bend News-Times that said, "Mob put in plane by bomb killed Rockne." And, or I'm sorry, bomb put in plane by mob killed Rockne. And that was from 2 years after the crash, from 1933. And I had heard like bits and pieces of this, but just really nothing of significance whatsoever until I read the story with this, under this headline, which was again from 1933. And long story short, that's what you get when you give a coffee table book to a former investigative reporter in New York City for 10 years who covered police crime in the mob.
And as you said, the rest is history as it evolved into the book that we know today. But we have to say that you were at Augie's locker room just off of the campus of the University of Notre Dame. And if individuals stop by Augie's, and a little bit later on in the show, we're going to have a segment with Augie where he'll be displaying some Knute Rockne memorabilia. But you can actually go and see the same newspaper article that's framed that Jeff did that inspired the book, As God's Witness. And so fast forward to last year, you get published in Notre Dame magazine, and that's really where the momentum started to come. And then boom, it's the pandemic that hits us, and it kind of put things at a standstill, especially with our hope of really rolling this out for the start of the football season last fall.
Yeah, it started out, I was a little worried about, people were telling me it's kind of a bad time to put out a book, and we couldn't do book signings. We couldn't do any public appearances whatsoever. And but I spoke with my designer, Rochelle Day, who did just a beautiful job on both books. And we both decided that let's just start a wave of Facebook, social media. Let's just start getting the book out, just getting the name out, getting my name out. And we started our blog, started the blog on our website, spiritofknute.com. And we just worked with social media throughout the year. And the plan was to build this, to build our name up to where once it did open up, then people would know us, the entire Notre Dame community would know us. And we could take off, and now we're poised and ready. We're ready to go. When football season's opens up this year, we're going to be armed with books and stories and a whole mission to resurrect the spirit of Knute Rockne.
And that's spiritofknute.com. That's where you can go and buy the book. So everybody go to that site right now, get a copy of the book, so that you can read it and really start learning about this story that really has not been really explored in many, many years. And Jeff, we'll be honest, there is some controversy. Some people don't believe the story, and others who actually agitate their craniums and said, hey, there is some evidence there that makes it credible. And I know we're very value neutral. And after reading the book and you writing the book, is that we're hoping somebody will come forth to maybe add that missing piece of the puzzle to further add to the story of Knute Rockne.
Yeah, there has been some. There was some preconceived notions, let's say, from some of the old guard coming into this, but more times than 9 out of 10 people who have told me that they had no idea about the story, and that any kind of a conspiracy theory or whatever they just kind of shoved off and they didn't believe. They have told me that after reading the book, they had their heads turned, and it's like, wow, there is something to this, isn't there? But that's why I did a thorough investigation on this. 100, more than 100 newspaper articles from the time period, which was covering both the trial and the crash at the same time, where the trial, Father Reynolds was involved with the Capone hitman, and the crash, which happened like 3 days after he got off the witness stand. And I've got the official accident investigation report, which wasn't made public until like the 2000s from the U.S. Department of Commerce. We have the tape of Father Reynolds himself talking about the story from an interview he gave shortly before his death in 1986. So every word of this story is factually documented, corroborated, and nobody's ever done this before. And you know what? Coach Rockne deserves it.
Hey, read the book and make up your own mind. He's Jeff Harrell, the author of As God's Witness. It's the story of Knute Rockne and the plane crash that claimed the life of the famous coach of Notre Dame back in 1931, 90 years. And there'll be a celebration of his life coming up in a couple of weeks. The St. Joe Valley Alumni Club of Notre Dame will be having their annual Knute Rockne breakfast online. And so we'll try to get some information to you as well on social media about that. And we'll be there, Jeff and myself as well, virtually online to talk about that. But Jeff, for the individuals who haven't read the book, they need to read the book. But for those who have, and obviously you wrote the book, but what's the one piece that really had you scratching your head and saying, wow, this is what really makes this story compelling?
The one piece was the chief mechanic of the plane grounded the plane. And he was overridden by a TWA supervisor who put that plane in the air, knowing that even though there was a last minute name change on the passenger docket from Father Reynolds to Knute Rockne, this TWA supervisor obviously knew Knute Rockne was on that plane. Now, the plane was delayed for 45 minutes from taking off, and in that time, they made room for 95 pounds of late mail delivery. It was a group of mail pouches, mail bags, and the bomb was later in subsequent articles that I read. The bomb was placed in that mail pouch. Now, the one thing that gets me is that, that TWA supervisor had to have been like bribed, to put that plane in the air, because it's well documented, even in the investigation, that the chief mechanic had ruled the plane grounded because of a wing malfunction, and that he was overridden, by that supervisor. So that supervisor, who was never named, is the one linchpin in this thing.
Well, the book is just more than the life of Knute Rockne. It investigates the crash, but it's also the story of Father John Reynolds and the mob in Chicago. And so you've kind of combined 4 books into one. And so if you're a fan of Notre Dame, if you're a person who really likes to know about the history of Notre Dame, this is something that has only been an anecdote and it's not been really talked about that much. So do yourself a favor, go to thespiritofknute.com, buy the book, and then join us as we continue these talks on In the Spirit of Knute. So Jeff Harrell, author, some last words before we take a break, and then we're going to have a little segment with Augie of Augie's Locker Room, and we'll take a look at some of the Knute Rockne memorabilia at his store.
I'm just excited about the book. I've got to acknowledge my brother, my best friend, dearly departed Neil Raby, was a huge Notre Dame fan. I mean, he grew up a couple blocks away from the stadium, and he's the one he's my inspiration. He's my Notre Dame inspiration on this. And to this day, I've said that Neil sided up to Coach Rockne up at a bar somewhere up in heaven and said, "Hey, my boy needs something to write about, and you've got a really good story here. So why don't you pass that down to him?" So, rest in peace, Neil, and Coach Rockne. We're going to bring you back to the forefront.
Well, it's getting close to spring football at the University of Notre Dame. We'll be celebrating the anniversary of the plane crash, and football's not that far away. So here's a chance to get into that Notre Dame spirit and to read the book, available at spiritofknute.com. And Jeff, we hope to have some people come forward and maybe offer some answers to questions that remain unanswered.
I would love it. Mm-hmm.
Coming up next, we'll talk with Augie of Augie's Locker Room about memorabilia.
This is the memorabilia portion with the National Institution for Notre Dame, my buddy Tim Augustine, Augie's Locker Room. And look what we got here today. We got bookends with Rockne busts. And
this is a sampling. These are some of the museum quality pieces you can find when you come here. Not all for sale. There are a lot of pieces in the store that are just here kind of as a museum quality. So if you walk into our store, you'll see a lot of Rockne items that we try to get, and show people that Rockne is still relevant and he's still a major part of this university. He built the stadium, and so that's forgotten. So that's what we're trying to do here. And I have a few pieces. The Rockne bus, some of these are dated back to the 20s. In fact, most of these are dated back to the 20s. This is an actual helmet that Rockne endorsed Wilson, and Notre Dame players wore a Wilson. Now, I'm not sure if they wore a Rockne Wilson, but I'm not surprised if they did. I do know that we have a uniform, a full Rockne uniform, pants, shoulder pads, helmets, cleats. We've got jerseys that were used in the movie Rockne All-American that were used obtained from the university, so they had to have been used back in the 20s or 30s. This is a humidor.
I know.
And it's signed by the three greatest coaches of the time, and this is signed by Tad Jones, Knute, and Pop Warner. Yeah. And what happened was his publicist, Christy Walsh, would have these made. These are actual footballs. He would have these made into kind of a trophy, and he would give these out to different coaches, dignitaries, often signed by these three coaches. And so these are probably as rare as you can find, because they were not mass produced or anything.
Now, did Rockne have these in his office?
I don't know for sure. I can't tell you for sure, but I do know this, that these things are highly sought after now, because obviously these are something that everybody has seen, maybe 2 or 3 of these. And a funny story, my brother and I were going up to the archives at the 6th floor of the Notre Dame library, Hesburgh Library, and so we stopped to see Father Hesburgh to show him this. And he was so impressed. He thought, oh my God, that is the coolest thing. I've never seen anything this cool. Tad Jones, Pop Warner, Knute Rockne. Boys, I just can't thank you enough. What a beautiful gift. We had to tell him. Father, we just brought it in to show you. We were going to go up and do some research on it from the archives, and so oh no, he says, oh, I understand. So we lit up cigars. We smoked cigars. Oh, what a class act Father was.
Well,
but
Coach Rockney liked his cigars.
he did.
Oh,
Yes,
right.
he did. Yes.
You told me once about the bust over here. Talk about that.
This was made. This was presumably from the family of Rockney. 30 years ago, there was a sale through Sports Collector's Store in Evanston, Illinois. I think Evanston. And Pat Quinn and his company got the whole collection from his granddaughter, Rockney's family. And she took it, or they went out to somewhere in Ohio or Pennsylvania, I don't know where, and bought this whole collection. It was the personal collection of the family, and sold this over a period of 4 days, and then another year later sold the rest of it. And so all of us back in the day 25, 30 years ago were bidding on these kind of things because we wanted a piece of that history. And this was one of those pieces. And I came about it secondhandly. I did not buy it that day, but I did buy it secondhand. And I have the authenticity from the family. And so this is a piece, and I think we have this on the website. I'm pretty sure we do. So yeah, but our website, by the way, is down, being worked on. It's going to be up and running about, what do you think?
Friday should be
About Friday?
Yeah,
Maybe the weekend?
This week.
Yeah, it's going to be bigger, better. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be, we got Georgia's working on this, and it's going to be amazing. So we're excited.
Talk values. Are these,
It's hard. It's hard to put a value on this. Probably, you're talking about 1,200, 1,600, 2,500, not for sale. And then, of course, there are bookends that are. We've got an abundance of bookends that range from about $175 a pair.
Okay.
Which is, because they're out there, they're available.
Now, are the bookends like older?
Yeah, they're made from Sibley's Products. That was a foundry here in South Bend, and some were produced prior to his death, and some were made after his death, and they're dated on the back.
Okay.
Some are pop metal that are just, not as valuable. The ones that are valuable are the bronze, and they're very heavy.
Now, this is bronze, right?
I don't know. This is not bronze. It is heavy. These are not bronze. None of
Okay.
this is bronze. No,
Okay.
no. So,
It's amazing. You feel the helmet, and you think about today, the players today.
it's a weapon.
And when I was researching the book, and especially when I was researching the Disciples segment of the book, where the players that he had, that went on to coach,
Yeah.
a lot of those guys in high school, more than not, the high school program, some of them were playing other sports because the high school program had closed its football program down because of a death on the field.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal.
Oh, I
and
bet.
this is the only padding they had was a little piece of leather that you use
Yeah.
for belts today.
Though, those kids were taught how to tackle a rugby style,
Right.
which is not as brutal. The helmet wasn't used as a weapon. And so there were a lot less head injuries, but a lot of broken noses and teeth.
Right.
A lot of broken noses and teeth. Because in talking to those players back in the day that wore leather helmets, they all said the same thing. We didn't tackle with our helmet.
Right.
As today, it's, a missile, head first. And
I think, I think television and ESPN highlights had a lot to do with that, of the more recent in the past 20, 30 years,
right.
going for the big hits, so they would
Oh,
launch,
yeah.
because you talk to a lot of those old players that I've seen on like film, like when they were in their 60s and 70s. I mean, some of them went on to coach in the NFL.
Right.
None of them seem to have any like CTE or head injuries. I mean, you don't know because the statistics weren't out then. But
That's a good point. They weren't out there. There had to have been. I mean, a brutal, a player that moved on from college into pros, like Paul Hornung wore a leather helmet at Notre Dame.
right,
But when he got into the pros, it was probably plastic, and
Yeah.
he took brutal hits, as most did in the NFL. We've seen the pictures.
now did he have dementia at the end? Hornung?
I'm not 100% sure. Well, to be honest, yes, he did,
Okay.
because I remembered a story, and that he had about 5 or 6 episodes where he couldn't remember anyone or anything.
Right.
And so that's probably true. He probably did. So, but again, those kids back in the day, it was rugby style,
Right.
and it was definitely something that we should teach today.
Right. One last thing. Talk about this for a second.
This one,
Yeah, that's amazing.
these were produced. I think the yearbook. I think one program has these at a lot of $1.25 or something. They're not painted. This was one of the only ones I've ever seen painted. They were a kind of a caramel type color like this, and I've never seen another one painted. And see, over the years, this goes back 40 years when I started collecting Rockney. And in some segment, I'll tell you how my love of Rockney came about. And it's certainly a story that I love telling.
Wraps it up for today. Visit Augie's Locker Room. You can purchase As God's Witness and Rockney of Ages at spiritofknute.com. And but above all, visit Augie's Locker Room, and visit Augie's. What's your website?
It's augieslockerroom.com, and it'll be up and going in the next 4 to 5 days.
augieslockerroom.com has all the memorabilia you're looking for, and even a few sports cards, which we will get into at maybe a later episode. So thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.